Hey, everybody. Today, it's just me and one of the BP coaches, Dr. Kris Alpers. So, Kris, you hit me up a while ago after I had flexed the new building that I had built on Instagram or Facebook or one of the Twitters or whatever. I don't know where it was, but you were like, that looks amazing. Tell me everything. Tell me how you got there, right? So give me the wind up of what you kind of how this started.
Yeah, Pete, excited to kind of jump on, but seeing you and hearing your journey, other people in Bulletproof, it's just been pretty eye-opening over the last 3 years. So you're right, you did flex on Instagram with your new build. It's beautiful. Could have went a little bigger with that TV we were talking about in the waiting room, but really it just kind of got my mind spinning. It's like, I want to learn what you've gone through, what you've learned in the process, but really just unpack, the different aspects of it, wealth building. There's so much that we've been exposed to, within the Bulletproof Mastermind. And that's really, kind of where the reach out started.
Yeah. And so when you reached out and were like, hey, I want to learn more. And I sat there for a while and I was like, Kris, I've built 10 buildings. And whether that's ground up or interior gut and remodel, in my career. And every time I build, I learn something. Every time I build, I get my ass kicked a little bit in certain capacities, but it's less of an ass kicking, right? You avoid some of the landmines of prior. But I thought to myself, I was like, I need to organize my thoughts for people like you who are interested, want to know why, want to know how, want to create the steps. And so I really spent some time creating the bulletproof guide to building dental offices, quite honestly. Because I think I have a unique way of doing it in that I'm very, I'm pretty frugal, believe it or not. For me, I cost engineer a lot of the build, believe it or not. If you looked at that new building, that's a cheaper type of construction, right? And I'll get into this later, but do you know what the most expensive part of building is potentially?
No, I really
let me rephrase that.
Sure.
Do you know what the cheapest design of a building would be?
No
Shape.
idea.
Shape.
The shape?
A square.
Really?
A square with a pitched roof, right? Because it doesn't have all those gables. It doesn't have all those angles. It's a square box with a pitched roof. That's the cheapest type of design to build. Whenever you start doing angles and corners, the more corners and pitch roofs and things that you have and the more geometric stuff, that adds complexity to the build. So you want to kind of look at cost engineering things, right? You want to kind of start at the simplest form, and then you always will migrate from there. But I'll get into that. So do you have any, I have a kind of a presentation / slideshow / like I said, I have like a 14-page document that I kind of created for my own knowledge here. So if you see me looking down, this is what it is. But today, if you're listening, what Kris and I are going to do is he's going to act as the lay person who has not built many buildings. And I'm going to act as the best case expert that you've got for doing it. I might not be the authority, but like I said, I've done it enough where I have good perspective. And I think I can offer a lot of value to those listening. So if you're in the mindset of building or renovating or expanding or whatever, like this is your pod. And I'm going to give you the breakdown steps because that's what everyone knows me as, the step guy.
Yeah.
Step one, do this. Right? Craig will give you the vision, the theory, the why, and I'll give you the do this, step one, do this, step two. It's just the way I'm wired. So Kris, do you have any questions preliminarily
No, I think you did a great job kind of, laying the foundation and just seeing what you've prepared. Let's just kind of unpack it. We've got some, kind of questions, thoughts, and we'll go from there.
Okay. You got it. All right. So I think the most important thing to start off with is why real estate. And I think why it's a massive arbitrage of your career as a dentist. And here's why, is that banks love lending to you, especially once your student loans are paid off, they really love lending to you. Do you understand why I just said that, by the way?
I do. You want to unpack that, because going through this, there's a journey of like, banks love lending to you to buy a practice, but you just said they love lending to you again, but once your debt is gone.
Yeah.
Why the kicker there?
So practices have collateral attached to them. Buildings have collateral attached to them, right? They're worth something to a secondary buyer. They consider student loans as unsecured debt, right? There's no way that you can collateralize someone's brain. So if they default, there's a bigger risk tolerance, especially too, because they know that impacts cash flow. And so what they're going to look at when they evaluate if you can afford this practice or this new building is your cash flow analysis. And even if you don't know how to do one, they're going to do one for you, because that's their underwriting process. Okay. So student loans, everyone's like, oh yeah, just get student loans, and they're fine. And remember, Trey and I used to argue about this. I don't know. Did you remember those pods where I was like, don't take them. And he's like, take as much as possible. And I see his point, but mine has always been like, get rid of them as fast as possible. So this isn't a loan thing about student loans, but like, I think that is the first thing to pay off in your life, personally, because it just frees up so much. And honestly, that was one of my happiest days, was writing that final check for student loans. It just felt so liberating.
A good feeling. But
yeah. Do you have student loans, just out of curiosity?
Currently, I don't. Paid them off a couple years ago, midway through Bulletproof. But just kind of seeing the journey that somebody might go through. It's like, get out of school, ton of debt, buy a practice, may or may not have the opportunity to buy real estate. But if you're looking to buy real estate, getting rid of that student debt would be beneficial.
Yeah, and I actually took, a home equity. I had some equity in my home, and at the time, and maybe some people say you're not supposed to or allowed to do that, but like, that form of debt was way better than student loans. So like, I just kind of converted one debt to another debt, but it was a good idea. So if you're upside in equity, which a lot of people are, okay. So banks love lending, right? So that opens up an opportunity, right? Typically, you're going to do, in a new construction, you're going to do what's called a construction to permanent loan, which has a little more underwriting, right? Because they don't know, there's no way for them to gauge what the building's going to be worth, right?
Sure.
So they have to do an as-built survey, just as a thing. And then, but if you want to take a building that has already market value on the CREXI or the LoopNet, that's easier. But you're still going to have to come up with, more than likely, 20%.
In either scenario, Pete?
Nope. Actually, yeah, it's a good question. So it depends. So when I say 20%, usually it's a 20% loan to value. So do you know what that means?
Why don't you unpack that? Yeah.
So if the building is worth, let's say the appraisal comes back at $1 million, right?
Got it.
And they have defined that, and that's what the purchase price is. Then the appraisal comes back at $1 million. And you've agreed to do a 20%. And the bank's like, look, 20% loan to value. Okay. And sometimes they can do less, Chris, when it's owner occupied. And I'll go over that. You got to have a majority owner occupied, meaning you take over the building. But if it's a 20% loan to value, it means so if you buy the building for $1 million and it appraises for $1 million, you have to come up with 200,000, right? As a pledge, as a kind of a down payment into the thing. Okay. So, but let's say hypothetically, you go under contract for $1 million. Okay. Now now you're in your diligence phase. The appraisal comes back at 1.5 million. Now what is your down payment?
So will they inflate it then after the appraisal?
It's loan to value. The value's been assigned by the appraisal.
Percent of the contracted. So
it works in your benefit, right? To go under contract. All right. And then, so typically buildings have a 25%, return on your investment. Yes, you may be buying for a cap rate kind of under, if you look at CREXI or LoopNet or something, you'll see cap rates, right? Which is that's the return you could expect as an investor, which is not the same as what you could expect as an owner occupied. Okay. So 25%, by the time you figure out your cash flow, your appreciation, and your tax benefit, it's typically around that with a lot of these buildings.
Yeah, that's
right?
great.
sometimes that can be skewed based on interest rates, right? Interest rates obviously have a big percent of it, and that can be skewed by things going way over budget.
Okay.
So anyway, so that's kind of step one, is just identifying that you don't be afraid to go talk to a bank, even if you think you're not ready. Yeah, in that scenario where I gave, sorry, I want to kind of clarify. I'm still kind of like, how did I just screw that whole down payment thing up, right? So, for example, it would have been 200,000. If the building goes up to 1.5, you would only have to put in probably 150, 125 into the deal.
Oh, okay, got it.
Right, because you have so much more. You have so much more value.
You have equity in it.
Exactly. So they recast it, is what it's called. Okay. So the first phase in this, Kris, is if you're going to a new area. I think the first phase, a new building will probably take you 2 years to build.
Start to finish. Okay.
Right? And that includes a lot of market analysis. That includes a lot of diligence. That includes, demographics and things like that. But, between the permitting and things like that, it'd probably take you 2 years, probably a year for the build and a year for the plan, just kind of as a rough. And that depends on too, if you find like a piece of raw land that you like, if it's pad ready, have you ever heard that term?
Yeah, you guys have said pad ready, and
so pad ready means that someone has taken an out parcel or piece of land and they've run your utilities, they've run your retention ponds, your drainage, getting rid of and they have pulled a lot of like the infrastructure, so it's kind of ready to go. It's pad ready to build. So that cuts out a lot. If you find kind of raw, undeveloped land, then you got to pull sewer, you got to run all these things. And so sometimes people get this like, well, look at that piece of dirt. It's so much cheaper. And it's because you forget that you're going to have a lot of infrastructure cost and development. Okay.
Got it.
So I've done raw land and it's great, but you gotta factor that it's probably going to cost about $100,000 to get that infrastructure in there.
Yeah.
No matter what size it is, quite honestly.
Is that timing going to go up quite a bit if it's completely
not
raw
really,
land?
because it's factored in with your general contractor, and they're the ones that handle that, right? And they're going to bid on that, right? Your builder's going to bid. But so the first step is market analysis. What you want? What do you think, Kris, would be? Let's say you found a great piece of dirt, or a great spot, or a great building for sale on Crexy. What do you think would be, and you get your dentographics report or otherwise, what do you think a good ratio would be? I know you're looking at my sheet, but what do you think a good ratio would be for dentist to population? Like how many dentists per X number of thousand people would be good? And what would be not good?
I see your number right here. You say 1 to 10,000, right?
That's the dream. That's not ideal, and it's rare.
Maybe in a more competitive, saturated market, maybe half that, 1 to 5,000.
5,000 would be good. Typically, what you're going to see in a saturated metro area is probably 1 to 2,000, 1 to 2,500.
Okay.
Right? So, but not all those practices are created equal. So just because a dentist exists doesn't mean it's your competition. So that is where you want to dig in from a diligence perspective and run a comprehensive report on those people that are in your immediate 5-mile drive radius. So here's where I'm going with this. There are dentists, like if you're a fee-for-service dentist and you see a bunch of people in plan, right? Maybe they are not your competition. Or, for example, you look at maybe their Google ad spend and they're not even competing on that. They're spending $0 on Google ads, and their website is crap, and their office is tucked away in an office complex. Do you think that's really the caliber of competition? So I would argue that this number could be weighted out of favor for you, meaning you could get it back, the demographics report, and it'd be like, oh, it's 1 in 2,000. But I think if you could dig in, either you're going to find that, man, there's a lot of thoroughbreds in this town, or the opposite. Man, there's a lot of people really not even playing the game.
Right. So
okay.
I hear you saying that, where the numbers might be skewed, but really kind of see what you're up against with your competition. Are they playing the same game that you're trying to play, and go from there?
Right. So, and you want to look in a 5 mile radius, right? You know, I know that you can run circumferences far away, and if you're building rural, you probably do want to take that to a 10 or 15. But that's a big market. That's a big thing that can sometimes shut down my interest in an area. Okay. The next thing is too, you want to make sure that the population can afford the type of dentistry that you're doing. So the right demographic mix. I will say though that history has proven that where am I going? Just because it looks like a rich area doesn't mean that that's going to translate to my practice being more successful. And contrary, just because it looks like it's poor above the poverty doesn't mean that it's not going to translate into the practice being super profitable. Okay.
Yeah. Interesting.
So it's but it is a good mix of the type of dentistry you want to do. So if you're just doing all on X kind of thing, then you probably want to have to be in a metro area.
Sure.
Right. If you're doing just cosmetics and you have this boutique practice, probably the same thing. But if you're doing quadrant dentistry and extractions and just like, you know, good quality base hit dentistry, like you can go rural and crush it. Okay. So we talked about market analysis. The site selection is probably the next thing that I would look at to make sure that it's something that I envision working. And so, Kris, I have made the mistake in my life of, remember I alluded to the fact that I was a little cheap.
Right.
I have made the mistake of looking to go and buying the cheapest asset, thinking that I could outmarket that underexposed piece of dirt. And what I will tell you now, having done 10 and having been a dentist for 25 years, that you can't overspend for the real estate in a great area, meaning it's that price for a reason. It'll act as a billboard. For example, take like a Craig, right? His building was super expensive. You know, he's on the side of a road and he has massive visibility. That visibility is, I can't speak to how important that is. And I know it costs more, probably double or triple the price of a thing, but I can't express how it is. You think of like the cost of a billboard every month. And I would argue that the billboard is only half as effective, maybe 25% as effective as your building there. But think of that amortized over time. Let's say a billboard costs, you know, $5,000. Like how much more would a building cost? I mean, how much more if you took that $5,000 deployed towards your debt service, amortized over whatever number of years, how much better of a building could that be? How much better of a lot could that be?
Right. So what I'm hearing you say, and I've kind of observed this, is there's a ton that we can do in marketing, but your building being in the right position with a big billboard and visibility kind of trumps all of that. Is that what I'm hearing?
Just will take the marketing lift, and you won't have to continually be on the hamster wheel of marketing, trying to overcome your subpar location because you bought it cheap. Cheap hurts forever. Expensive only hurts a little bit in the beginning.
Yeah. Just
right?
a little bit.
And so, you know, get what you can. And look, I know that there's budgets to this, but that's why I build. And then sometimes you can't finish the whole building. You know, you can build a big building and sometimes you can't finish it all because you don't have any money. And like, that's okay. I'd rather have a premium spot. So what do you think would be the minimum VPD, vehicles per day, that I would consider at this point?
You personally would consider?
Yeah. We're just spitballing here.
Spitballing.
Right? We're having a beer conversation. We're sitting around having a beer.
Let's say 5,000 is the minimum.
I would, at this point in my life, I would only do 10,000.
Okay.
Right. 5,000 is good. 5,000 is moderately busy, but like what I have seen in every practice that has been on a 4-lane road or more, I don't have to market.
Wow.
Okay. I have done ones that I have been in an office complex, and guess what? I spend at least that with the delta on advertising. And that is just rented attention, as I talk about in all my marketing lectures. Paid ads are rented attention. It's not attention that grows over time. You are renting eyeballs. So it's super frustrating. But when you're first starting out, you have a big inclination towards doing it as cheap as possible, right? Because you have student loans and you don't know, and what if I fail and all this shit, right?
Yeah, that's great. So it's kind of laying the groundwork of where to spend that extra money, where to stretch.
Yeah,
That just
yeah,
shows
and then
how
look at it.
powerful that is.
Don't look at it. I would encourage everyone, don't look at it as the dollar amount. Look at it in terms of the complete package amortized over the entire place of that loan. Right. So, because sometimes you say, man, that land is $700,000 versus the one over here is 300,000. Right. And like, it's, good versus bad kind of thing. But like, what is the delta of that 400,000 over the course of time?
Yeah.
Is it going to be more? Absolutely. But guess what? It's also going to be worth a lot more. Okay. So then there's some, we're still in the strategic planning. This is phase one. So then you want to kind of look at your financial planning and just assume that you're going to be about the cost of construction is going to be about 90% of what you get a loan for. And then your equipment's probably going to run to outfit the building is probably going to be 10 to 15% of that, right? New chairs, new statums, new whatever, right? So roughly 10 to 15%. And you can cost engineer there as well.
Great.
The good news with that is that I would recommend not looping that into your construction loan if you can avoid it, because it complicates the bank. It complicates their lending. Supply houses like the Pattersons and Shines typically are so inclined to want you to get you to buy their stuff that they will give you 0% for 12 months, and then they will start the amortization. But it's a totally different loan that doesn't complicate your building loan.
Okay.
But it's important to a lot of times, I myself have done this, and I've had a lot of friends, they burn the ships building the building, and then they're like, oh, I have an empty building now, I need to go now put expensive equipment in. And it's a whole different, like, oh shit,
Right. When do you start that process with the equipment financing? Does that come later along in that?
Okay, so that's a great question. So you're probably going to have that conversation 3 to 4 months before completion of the building, when you're going to want it installed. So yeah, but trust me, that can happen. That financing happens in a matter of days, and it's a signature loan versus an underwritten loan. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah. Okay. And so the other thing you want to think about is your regulatory and their legal. So permits can drag out, right? So, in your area, for example, like Craig's area, I'll keep using, or Metro Atlanta, the permitting process took me in one of my builds 9 months. Now, granted, I had to get some rezoning done. I had to get some clarity here. I had to get a board approval, blah, 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 blah. So in the city, especially if you're doing ground up, you can, the permit process can be exceedingly long, right? And sometimes you won't know that if you're under contract for something. So that's where you want to kind of go under your due diligence, right? If you're buying a raw piece of land, you want to have a 90-day due diligence so that you can go talk to elected officials or building offices in your town or county and say, hey, here's what I'm thinking. What do you think? Am I going to run into problems with permitting? Right. And then document those conversations so that when you finally, let's say you pull trigger, you now have things in writing that said that you approved this and you said that we could probably do that. Now, in a rural community, okay, so that's the ground up. It's a lot easier when there's an existing building there because they've already been permitted, right? Meaning you're not asking for approval to build anything. You're just then going to have a permit to do an interior build out, which is pretty simple.
Great.
Okay. So ground up is very, very harder in a city environment.
And that's the heavier lift and somewhat of the unknown if you're going to the ground up city versus rural versus
rural. I mean, look, rural. A lot of those counties are very pro business friendly because they want to encourage more community services, and so both of my permits took days, not months.
Sweet.
Right. And then, okay, we talked about that. Okay. So now we're getting into phase 2, which is let's say you've found the land or you've found the building. Now you're going to get into, okay, This is check the box. And maybe you've made an offer on this land, or maybe at this building, maybe you haven't, but you want to start getting into the design and documentation phase. And so this is where I think you can save a tremendous amount of money. Again, I kind of alluded to this in the beginning that there are cheaper ways to construct than others that don't have to look cheap. Like that building I showed you and shared as we opened with this pod is a single pitch roof, and it's essentially a big rectangle, right?
Right.
Yes, it has a lot of glass and that cost and things like that. So I spiffed it up, but in all intents and purposes, it's a simple construction, very straightforward.
Great.
Okay. So why don't you ask any questions you have at this point? Because I feel like I'm vacillating, Kris, between like an interior build out, which is a different animal than a ground up, and I don't want to just keep bouncing back and forth, or maybe I will have to. I also don't want to exclude the other one, because sometimes we don't know as a listener. If you're listening to this, sometimes you don't know what's going to happen, meaning you may find a really great building that you want to interior build out, or you may find a piece of land that you want to do. So I'm trying to teach all the things.
Yeah, no, I think to me, it seems like it's laid out. There's a little more unknown with the ground up, right?
Yeah. So there's a little more unknown, but there's also a lot more upside,
Right.
I think, right? In the analysis of your net worth. And I'll talk about that later. Back to the banks love dentist, right? Once there is a long-term dental lease in place, the building is typically worth, I mean, this is just ballpark from the building is typically worth about 2 times what you have in it.
Really? Wow.
Maybe a little bit less. I've had some that are a little less, a little more, but long-term leases are very sexy to the investor who lives in California, for example, wanting to invest in Georgia dental practices or dental, right? Dentistry is very stable. You have, it's an inflation hedge asset over time. And so they're good for, as a matter of fact, I'm selling one of mine right now, and it's a pretty low cap rate, but it's generating a tremendous amount of interest because dentistry is sexy to the outside investor. Did that answer that?
Yeah, it did. I think once we or the listener lands at what opportunity they have, for me, living in more of a saturated, urban environment, it seems like ground up construction isn't as available. But I think
because
once
of
you're
the availability of land.
right.
Yeah. And so I was helping David with that too. David Amador, another Bulletproof coach. And he was like, dude, there's nothing available. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Give me this map, and looked around, and he was right. Like, I get it. Like some places are just harder to find buildable dirt, right?
Right.
Secondary markets, easier. Tertiary markets, there's probably a lot. But it just depends on what you're doing. So yeah, so maybe for you have to look at a great visible building that comes up for sale that you're like, that will be a great dental office.
Right.
I gotta say, like 2 of my offices that I ever bought, buildings that I ever bought, and I was like, man, that's a great building. If that ever came available, I would want it. Lo and behold, look what happens, right? You put it out there.
Yeah. And then once that happens, we kind of, either way, we get to this next stage of where you can kind of start designing.
Yeah. So this is where you want to act like, I was going to throw out like a sweeping generalization about people and their Pinterest boards, but this is where you want to get on Pinterest and start you a board of what you want things to look like, right? Like I knew I wanted a building with glass and pitched roof. So you find examples of what you want this to look like. I like this. I don't like this, right? Versus, like if you're a dentist, right, and you're doing smiles, you kind of like when the people come in and they keep showing you the same smile on, or the same type of smile on all these models that they want to look like, so to speak, or all these pictures, because it's like, okay, you like a rounded veneer with, larger centrals or whatever it is. Okay, I see the trend here. Same thing will happen to an architect designer. They'll see kind of like it'll help you get what you want, as opposed to being like, hey, design me a building. And they're coming like, okay, well, what do you want?
Right.
So create your Pinterest board of just cool architecture or something that you want to build. Right. So that's kind of a good phase. And then you want to start interviewing architects, designer, builder, architect, designer in that process, right? And you want to try to get all this handled up in the front of your thing. So you want to negotiate, hey, I want to build a 6,000 square foot office. I want it to look generally like this. And I want a complete total package of what you would require of the engineering. It's called MEPs, the mechanical, the electrical, and the plumbing. I want all those built into those because those are separate plans, MEP plans. And so you don't want to get just a pretty building and then have to then go to engineering. So try to get an all-in price quote from your architect.
So are you looking for a builder to design your project as well? Or
Well,
are you
you
looking
can do
for
that. So those are called design builds. And so that is where a build house has an architect in-house, right? And they kind of do it turnkey. And a lot of times they'll do design build and then design at the end, meaning designer. So that is probably the most turnkey. I like it because I like that aspect. I think it's sometimes a little bit more expensive and bespoke option, but I like it sometimes because especially if you're practicing 5 days a week and you do not have time to devote to being on site and answering questions, they take full accountability of what they're doing because they were the architect and they were the builder, right? So there's no finger pointing. This contrast that with situations I've been in where it's the architect versus the builder. I pick the architect, then I pick the builder, and something happened in the plans and they didn't build it right. And so whose fault is it? And so that can be a little frustrating.
So for somebody that's, trying to crank it, they're practicing near full time. It, to me, sounds like the design build could be a smoother process.
Another hack with this or tip. This is why if you're full time and you're not planning on titrating down during your build, which is totally fine. Let's say you're Monday through Thursday. Make sure that people know on the front end. I always say on the front end, everything is just an explanation and everyone agrees to it. On the back end, everything becomes an excuse. So tell your builder, tell your architect, tell everybody, my days to meet with you are Friday. Do not call me during the day. Do not disrupt my patient flow. Do not call me at night. Save your questions. I will be on site on Fridays. Yeah. You're not going to lose that much time, believe it or not.
Good.
Okay. The other thing I will recommend is when you finally pick a designer, make sure that they, in your quote, right? And you can generate this stuff, Kris, with GPT. It would be a great thing to use this for. It's called the RFP. So you can submit to let's say you pick 3 architects that you like. I would create what's called an RFP. And I would say, here's all the things I want. So RFP stands for request for proposal. Right. And so here are my requirements when I want you to give me a proposal on your fees. And so I would say, I want the MEP. I would say also, I want Revit returned designed. Right. So Revit. So you're going to get CAD CAM designs of your business plan. Your business plan of your building, right. Which are just the architectural printout plans. But in that, there's an export in AutoCAD where you can typically have the Revit option, which will convert that building into a 3-dimensional object so that you can visualize all the things. And so if you're not going to do a design build, get the Revit and then really spend some time with figuring out, like before you hit print, when I say print, I mean the build, before you hit the print button and get started. My advice, if you're not in a huge hurry, would be to have identified the flooring in every room. You've identified the paint color in every room. You've identified a lot of the fixtures, the furniture, the FF&E, furniture, fixture, and equipment. You've went in with this Revit and you've seen where all the outlets are. You like that. You like the design there. You like this. It just takes out so many of these questions, because what's going to happen is if you don't have a design build, your build, they're gonna give you about 2 days heads up. Hey, we need your plumbing fixtures. Hey, we need the paint colors. Hey, we need this. The plumbers are coming on site. We need this, and you become the intermediary to your build. And to me, I play the woe is me, but I like it. I get involved. It keeps me engaged. I find deals. right? But I don't see patients clinically, so I have a little bit more flexibility in that aspect. So what have I said so far that is question? Do you have questions about?
No, I don't really have a question. I just wonder, so if you've built 10 buildings early on in this process for you, did you have buildings without the Revit?
Oh yeah.
That was painful.
Yeah. Not painful, just you have to be on site a little bit more, right? You have to be, and you know, and also there's value to working with architects and builders who have built dental before. That doesn't mean that you're just going to get exactly what you want because they're going to know how to do it, but it does mean that they're a little bit more familiar with the MEP, which are the great differentiators in a building. Once you get past the MEP in a building, it's just a building, meaning it's walls, it's floors, it's paint, it's fixtures, it's bathrooms, right? That's the thing. It's the plumbing, the electrical, the HVAC, which have different requirements. But once you get past that, then you can be like, okay, cool. But like I have seen, Kris, and I have seen people blow it. I've seen catastrophic problems by people assuming too much in the build, right? For example, in my Highlands build, which I did in 2017, Virginia Highlands, Ponce Highlands, it's called, downtown Atlanta, kind of near. I walked in and I said I bought a building. It was a restaurant. We gutted it, right? And so now we're into raw studs and concrete. So they have to cut the concrete to put in the plumbing, right? And it's a big process. The plumbing went in and they covered it back up with the rock. Mm-hmm. And they started covering it up with cement. So what did I find in that plumbing? What do you think the problem was with the plumbing that was now in concrete?
Maybe the bends in the plumbing.
Boy, I've taught you well. Yes.
Yeah, I had that same issue happen, and it's not fun.
So bends. So do you remember? I think I keep saying it's Bernoulli's principle from science, but if you remember that principle from school, suction doesn't like going in 90-degree bends, right? Your suction drops down by a factor of, I don't know the statistics, but every 90-degree bend like lowers it like 10% or 20%. I don't know what it is. I'll have to look it up now that I can. Maybe you can GPT that a lot, maybe. So what you want to have is something called a sweep, where it's not even a bend, it's just like a circle like this, like a half circle, or 245s at minimum. So if you have to do a 90-degree turn, you do 245s. So you would think like the plumber, like I've done dental, I understand, wouldn't have to have the dentist come in and say, hey, what are you doing? Numbnuts. Like this is going to be a catastrophic problem. And so what did I have to do? To tear it up and do it again, because I knew that this problem would come back and haunt me. There would be gunk that would collect in those bends in 5 years, and my plumbing would be rendered almost useless.
Yeah, that happened to me like 2 years after owning a practice, doing like a fresh remodel, and I got to trench and replace all of our plumbing after I just redid everything. So
yeah, and so
that oversight, but man,
but like these are the things. Like there's only a few like dental rules that you want to make sure that you're paying really close attention to. That's a big one, right? Dedicated circuits are another one in your electrical, but like that a big deal. Your HVAC can be, because we have so many little walls and operatories, mm-hmm. like you want to make sure you have good HVAC engineering, but like the plumbing is like a big thing, man. Like that is like the heart of a dental practice. Like your water lines, your air lines, your nitrous lines, your med gas, your, things like that is the heart and soul of a dental practice. And you cannot afford to mess that up.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take you getting a PhD in plumbing to be able to offer value to your plumber. Okay. So I know I just went on something there, but you and I both had, coincidentally, we didn't discuss this, but you and I both had pain associated with just that little issue right there.
Right.
Okay. So, I mean, Kris, I could spend so long on this design phase. I think too, if you're hands-on and you like this, then let's say you find a building on Crexy. Okay. Here's the walls, right? Here's the dimensions. Get a floor plan and start playing around with the build of what you want, right? Also submit that hypothetical plan before you give it to an architect, by the way, because the architect's going to cost you to do renderings. So you want to play around with it on your end. You also want to play around with it and give it to Shine and Benco and all the people and say, here's what I want. And I'm not saying use them, but sometimes you will get lucky. So a lot of the time the designs are fully functional and their designs are optimized to sell you as much equipment as possible. I'm just going to hit you straight, right? Here's your design. It's fully functional. It looks like, looks like jail, but look how many ops we put in this 800 square foot office, right? It looks like a jail cell.
Right.
But sometimes you'll get something that's really good, right? Or at least it's an ideation of knowing what you don't want. So it's a lot easier when you have existing walls, right? You're buying an existing building, you have existing walls. I want to make a dental office. So I would also recommend, if you're going to do that, like just play with the block diagram. It's called block diagramming, where you kind of just are you're not drawing in chairs, but you're like, I know that my dental rooms are going to be 10 by 10. I know my hygiene are going to be this. And you just start blocking them in to play with some designs, right? And some of the software you can get on the internet really will help you do that pretty cool. So do you know the rule of thumb for, let's say you have a 4,000 square foot building? Do you kind of know a rule of thumb to decide how many operatories you could put in there?
Other than as many as possible. I really don't, so where, like, how would you break that down?
Yeah. So not as many as possible. I think that's a bad place to start, first off.
Sure.
Unless you're in like New York where you have no that real estate's such a premium that you're like, okay, like we're going to have bunk beds for operatories. Like I'm going to get the top bunk, Where do you think would be a good, let's say Kris found a building that was a 5,000 square foot restaurant and it was a pretty simple floor plan. How many ops do you think that you could plan to get in there that would work well?
So let's say 5,000, if we think 400 square feet per op, you could do 10, right, and then have 1,000 overflow for staff waiting room.
Yeah. So probably in a 5,000, you could do 12, no problem.
12,
right? Because you don't have to account that 400 accounts for the overflow and all the accessory things, meaning the reception, the admin offices, blah, 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 blah. It's just a good rule of thumb to say my operatories are going to be 100. They're 10 by 10, right? So that's the mistake people make. Like, oh, if they're only 10 by 10, that means I can get like 20 in a 2,000 square foot office. No, you've got accessory things that need to support it.
Okay.
So 400 is a good rule of thumb. Hygiene, of course, take a little bit more. So if you have more hygiene, you can get some more rooms in. But I think jamming things in there is the wrong approach, right? So I like the rule of thumb of 400. Whenever I've looked at something, I'm like, okay, 400. That's a good. So my recent build, I think I did, just to give you a frame of reference, I think it's about 5,500. I think I'm right at 12. Actually, I am right at 12. So even a little bit more, because I like spacious waiting rooms. I like spacious meeting rooms kind of thing. I'd rather pay a little more and not be jammed, because this is going to be people's homes, including your home, home away from home.
Right.
So that's just my personal.
Yeah, it's good. It's good insight. So the 400 number is kind of including overflow.
It includes everything. Yeah. It's a good rule of thumb. I went 10 ops. I need a 4,000 square foot building. That's inclusive of all the admin calls. Break room, bathrooms, waiting room, treatment coordinator room, all that. It's inclusive.
Yeah, that's great.
The next thing you'll do when you get to that design, let's say you've blocked something out and you like where you're going and you've gotten some designs back from the Shines and you've done your own, and you've engaged an architect, but you haven't started the billing process, right? Meaning you haven't engaged. You've sent out RFPs, but this is like your preliminary planning. What I would do is if you found something you like, I would I would print it out big as you can, and I would get a pen and I would draw, let's say there's a string. So let's say there's all your clinical operatories and then your sterilization. I would draw the intended pathways of each employee who's going to reside there. So if it's a hygienist, what does their 90% of their path look like in their day?
Interesting.
So you're saying, with me so far?
Yeah, I see where you're going. So you're
going to draw one line. She's going to go to sterilization and she's going to go to the waiting room, right? And so those lines are going to go waiting room, reception. I'm sorry, waiting room, sterilization. Okay. You're going to go to the next room, do the same thing. You're going to go to the operatory, do the same thing. You're going to go to your admin space and look at that. And so what you're going to look at is, where are your bottlenecks in your building? Because a lot of times that's where you want to look at the concentration of red and say, maybe I should expand the hallway there a little bit. Maybe I should round that corner to increase visibility of not this hard corner and collisions with a full cassette. Maybe I want to give a little more optics to it being spacious for the patient perception as they come in, and then we can condense it later. We can condense angles in the back, but it's a good ergonomic thing. And I have been sent over the years. People know that I am into building and architecture and things like that, and so I've been sent a lot of designs. And you look at it and you say, it's cool. It's a cool looking design, but ergonomically, you're going to wear your employees out. Okay, because what you think is like, it's no big deal. It's just another 75 steps to the sterilization. Okay, but 75 times 20 times a day times X number of years times blah, 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 blah. It's a problem.
Yeah.
Not to mention, Kris, it's inefficient for the time you have been employing that person.
Yeah, I think that's...
it's overlooked. No one looks at this stuff. I mean, I'm pulling up stuff that I've just learned over time. But yeah, I mean, it's a big deal to me. So I do that. I look for, as a matter of fact, like Tanner in our mastermind, I've helped him, kind of evaluate some of this. Right. And I'm like, draw the lines, and he drew the lines and he modified his plan. He's very involved in it.
Yeah.
So that's a good, helpful little tech.
I like that. Because in my current building, there's one corner where there's almost a near fatality, like every day, like people running into it. And then the other thing I'm thinking about is, where's your technology? Like, if you want your hygienist to be doing cone beams, you want that cone beam close to the hygiene room, because when stuff's tight, they're going to be...
alternatively, like on the way in from reception, meaning
right.
You're typically doing that in new patient exam. Hi, nice to meet you. Let's stop off here, right? Maybe it's on the way back from reception, but yes, that is a one-time thing.
Right.
But granted, they're doing far fewer trips to the pan or CBCT all day long than they are doing to sterilization.
Right.
Than they are doing to the break room. Than they are going to the bathroom, right?
Sure.
And you don't have to draw red lines all over the place, right? But you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
like you 100%. Said, there's bottlenecks. Okay. I wrote in here copious Cat 6 and strong Wi-Fi. That's a little granular. Okay, so architectural plans. I look back at some of my charges for architecture plans. Remember, I talked about the RFP for this. And typically it's landed, around 2% of my total construction cost. Okay. Maybe a little bit more in certain times, maybe some less, but like a good set, I think, is probably in the 2 to 3% range. Okay.
Great.
What I love about the fact that, so the Revit, let me go back there for a second. So remember, that's the software that allows you to look at things three-dimensionally. It will also, there is actually another version of Revit that you can put on like some meta goggles,
right,
or 3D shit, and walk through it and look up, and you're looking up in the corner of your building. You look up and you're looking down, like you're literally walking through your building. And people think that that's just luxurious and I don't need that. I will tell you though, that like going back to my question about like picking out the floors and picking out this, and the more you have ready to go, and the more you've looked at the outlet that's in the wrong position, like there's no way you're going to determine that looking at a two-dimensional plan if that outlet is in the wrong position. But let me tell you, when it gets built and then you decide it's in the wrong position and you have drywall, now you have what's called a change order. And contractors love change orders. I know contractors who make all their money on change orders, right? Because you have no choice. And I'm not saying they're being, you get what I'm trying to say, right?
Right. Yeah.
This is the VIG. So change orders can absolutely destroy your budget. And sometimes you say, well, how would I know? And sometimes you wouldn't know. But Revit is the antidote for not knowing, because honestly, if you can walk through it visually the first time, you will know, like, I don't like that there. Let's change that to here. And having them just slide that over in Revit before you have is like super easy. Okay. All right. We talked about the 90 degrees. Anything further?
No, on your most recent build, did you have the 3-dimensional walkthrough with goggles?
I did actually. It was really cool. I didn't do it on this last, so that was my second to last. I didn't do it on this very last one because I thought like I don't need that. And it would have been helpful, even still. It would have been helpful. I would love to sit here and tell you I had no change orders even this last build, but I did. I had two. Believe it or not, the architecture had put the ceiling. It's a drop ceiling, and they put the ceiling at 8.5 feet. So I walked in, and I've got giant ceilings in this building,
right?
And I was like, "What is this? What is this? Miniature ceilings?" And he's like, "Well, that's what the plan said." And sure as shit, plan said 8. So the whole 5,000 square feet of it had to be. I was like, I ain't doing that. I am not coming this far. We had to take them back up to 11 feet.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
So it's just crazy. Right. And that was a 7. I think it cost like $7,000 just to do that change order. So like they can wipe you. So if you get caught with your pants down like 10 times in a bill, which is pretty common, it's going to delay your process, right? Whatever you thought you were like, I just want to get started and build, whatever you think you're saving by getting starting. And you could have used that time cheaper and wiser in kind of a Revit and a planning phase is what I'm
Got
going.
it.
I wish someone had told me slow your roll, Boulden. Like just spend a little bit more time.
This would be the time to, if you're a listener going through this, spend the time, invest in this, review
invest in the Revit, invest in your plans, study the shit out of them. Yeah. Right? Like ask for if you don't have the right elevation on the plan, like make elevations or something that you're visually looking at versus like a 2D plan, you're just looking at the floor plan. You want to see the elevations. Cabinetry is a big thing. Okay. I mean, I literally could just sit here and I feel like I could do a weekend course on this.
That's great.
So now you're coming into the phase where you're like, okay, I know what I want. I found where I want to build. I know what I want to build. I've got some preliminary designs. Now it's time. I've got the architecture plans of what I want to build. Now it's time to find the person who's going to build it. And my recommendation is again, ask for referrals in this, especially if it's in a city. Ask for someone who has experience. And then you're going to send this out for bid, right? So this is a bid for proposal. So you're going to send out your architecture plans for bid. And so the builder is going to come back, and I would recommend probably 3. And you want to pre-qualify them, and you want to meet with all of them. And after they give a quote, some of the quotes may come in super high, some may come in super low, but I would encourage you to meet with everyone. Again,
what else would you do when you mean pre-qualify? Is that where you're saying you're asking for,
references?
Okay.
You're asking for references. You're asking how many they've done. I mean, dental builds. And if they haven't done any, that doesn't mean no. It just means like, hey, there's some things that are specific to dental. Can you research that to make sure that you're cool with it?
Great.
Right. I would also say that I would also pre-qualify them. Like, what's your communication style? I have had so many, not so many. You need to establish if they're a good communicator on the front end. Like, what is your rapport for reporting to me and communicating with me? Or have you done in the past, and what's worked and what hasn't? And these are like silly questions, you think. But sometimes I've had contractors I'm like, what are we doing this month, this week? Like, what are we doing? I don't know, no idea. Where are we? And I have to ask them. It's me having to pull information versus being pushed the information. Last week we accomplished this. This week we're looking at doing this, right? And getting an email every Monday that says this. What we're at the bottom, what we're going to need you for on that on Friday is blah 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 blah. Okay, now we're talking, right?
Right.
And I would even create the template. Like, you can't be too specific. Like I said, on the front end, everyone wants your job. Everyone wants the job, and they will kind of say, okay, yeah, no problem, I'll do that. Okay, no problem, I'll do that. But when you get into and you've contracted with them and you've signed the builder agreement, now it's like, what? You want me to send you an email every Monday? I ain't doing that. You know what? You want me to, I don't know. Also, you want to research, just Google their name, Google their company, and research to see if they have any pending lawsuits, right? Builders, unfortunately, get into a lot of lawsuits. Once in a while is okay, but you want to be able to know, bring that to the table. Hey, what happened with you versus Mrs., Dr. Smith? I read that online, right? And that's public knowledge. So here's also where things can get a little bit crazy with a builder. So there is something called a cost plus type of build, which are a lot of builds are. You ever heard that expression?
I haven't. Can you break that down?
So cost plus means that here's the price of the building. I am going to build it for whatever it costs me. So if your flooring comes in at $50,000, that's your cost to you, right? Whatever the contractor charges me, I'm charging you, plus 10%, plus 7%, plus 15%, whatever it is. So it's cost plus my commission for managing that. Okay. The problem, and this is the way most builds are done, just to be honest with you. The problem with this, and I've always thought this being a problem, is that your incentives are not aligned.
Interesting. So they make more money by spending more money.
Right. So remember back to that change order. That's why builders love change orders, because it amplifies the scope of work, which then amplifies the commission, blah, 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 blah. Right. So what you want to kind of look for, if you can, and again, when you're doing this your first time, it's really hard to be a shrewd negotiator. But what you want to try to do, and spend some time with this, again, this is another opportunity for like some intelligent GPT work, and put in your scenario and talk to it like an advisor, because it's way smarter than me about this stuff. And say, look, I want to design something where our incentives are aligned, where me and my builder can agree on a guaranteed maximum price. But they can't agree, Kris, to a guaranteed maximum price until we go back to the phase where I've told you want to have the fixtures and equipment already picked out. The flooring, here's the equipment, here's the plumbing, here's the blah, right? So it's really hard to give a guaranteed maximum price when you don't have all your fixtures, when you don't have everything kind of buttoned up. I want a stone fireplace. Here's the stone. I want these countertops. Here's the countertop model number. Here's the paint. I want Sherman-Williams. You cannot be too specific. And then you can say, I want a guaranteed maximum build price. And then you also want to create some kind of incentive where it works the opposite way. Meaning, for every dollar you save me below the guaranteed maximum price, I will pay you 20 cents on the dollar.
Interesting.
So it aligns your incentives, and it's tough. It's a tough, that doesn't negate their builder fee, right? There is always a builder fee, meaning building costs $2 million. They have to have 5% of that, $100,000 general construction fee in that, let's just say. But you want to design a way where it's someone not trying to work against you.
Yeah, it's great insight. And do you incentivize them to stay on schedule as well? Because I think that'd be the other thing.
I don't do that as much as a lot of other people I've heard. I don't do that because I don't want there being freneticism in my build. Meaning they are likely just as incented to finish the project as I am.
Got it.
So our incentives are aligned there.
Okay.
Because then they get to move on to the next, right?
Right.
And put this in their portfolio and get more work and whatever. And like, no one wants to linger on a project. Okay. So, I talked about the weekly email, right? I would put that in the contract. Again, you want your information pushed to you. You don't want to have to pull it from, because you aren't going to know when and how and what questions to ask. You're just
right.
Okay. And then this is the phase again, where I talked about, you want to be able to material selection as much as possible. You want to also, did you know that you probably shouldn't put wood floors in a dental office?
It makes sense, but I think it would be easily overlooked.
Why would it make sense?
Well, just everything we have, it's pretty easy to have a room flood or a bottle overflow or, everything we do. But if you think about construction, usually we're thinking about it with the history of your home construction, where you want wood, where you want those other things.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's things you want to avoid in construction potentially. I know wood looks good and it's cheap sometimes, but it obviously is not water resistant. So if you have a flood, it can obviously, even just a little bit, it can ruin that area of the floor to buckle.
Yeah.
Additionally, it's not as resistant to traffic, right? So it's going to wear quicker.
Sure.
So I think personally, this is just me, the best type of flooring is LVT. Okay.
Just a laminate vinyl. They look pretty nice.
They look great now. They look great. And they're wear resistant. And Chris, what's great about it is versus like a polished concrete or something that you're thinking like, I'll just make it super durable. Is it's really hard on you. Like things like that, or concrete's really hard on people's feet. It makes your day feel longer.
I wouldn't think
unless you're
that.
wearing like Crocs, which is why hospital employees typically wear Crocs.
Interesting. I thought it was just for the looks, but
no, it's because man, it's like walking on concrete all day long is hard on your feet.
Interesting.
So wood is LVT has a little cushion in there.
Nice.
So do you know why you wouldn't want to use granite in your clinical rooms?
Not really. Like if it looks good, why wouldn't you use granite?
Because it has porous. You can take an orange and put it on a piece of granite, right? And come back and it will be, it will have leaked through. I don't know what duration, but there is porosity. So that fluid can actually go through that surface. So there is porosity to it. So you can imagine from a biohazard standpoint, how granite is cheap, it looks good, is problematic. Now, do it in your reception, do it in your admin rooms, do it in your checkout, all you want. But for the back, for the clinical rooms, for sterilization and operatories and labs, in labs, you probably just want to do a laminate countertop, right? Home Depot kind of laminate. But for your operatories, you're going to want to look at doing a Corian or a quartz.
Got it.
Quartz is just a glass, right? But Corian is the most non-porous surface, and it's reasonably priced.
Nice.
Okay. Again, I know we're going like super granular, and people are probably like, I just came here for I don't know. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're taking notes on this. Again, you can't be too specific with the things you want to put in. And I always thought like, oh, there'll be time for that later. And there always is time for that later, but sometimes it hits you super fast, meaning, hey, we need the toilet model numbers that you want. We want the type of toilet, right? We need the door handles. What do you want here? And now you've got Mrs. Jones in Op 2 that you're working on. You have 3 hygiene checks, and your builder is asking you, the plumber's here. What do you want us to put in? You talk about level 10 anxiety.
There it is.
There it is.
Yeah.
There it is. All right. So again, I talked about the timeline for building. Let's say you found now a builder. You've agreed to an aligned structure. You like the bid. The bank has approved this. I'm not even getting into how you would submit to the bank, but obviously you would need the bid for proposal to go to the bank with the plans. So that's a whole different thing of loan approval. But I'm not going to go there in this because otherwise this would be a weekend course. Yeah. So let's just say we have the money and now we're into the pre-construction phase, right? You want to ask them for the scope of how long without penalties, but I always say assume about a year. Okay. That building I just built was, I think it was 10 months by the time we broke ground. Right. But like, okay, just plan for that. I would say, so planning for 11 to 12 months, I think is fair. Interior remodels, obviously not as long. Ground up construction. This is for ground up construction.
Okay.
One thing that you want to avoid also with your contractor is you being monkey in the middle. Okay. So a lot of times these people will not talk to each other, meaning the designer will talk to you and the builder, and everyone becomes accustomed to you being the conduit of communication.
Got it.
And so you need to establish that up front. Like, I need you to be talking to each other, not me, and CCing me on the documentation, but I should not be involved in the communication or the delivery of information. Okay.
True.
Again, saying that you're going to be available for Friday site visits. If there's an emergency, make sure to call me after 4 p.m. after patient care, and I can drive over there and meet with you.
So are you trying to avoid, based off of past experience where there's a fire drill?
Yeah,
You're prepping
readily
somebody's,
available. Like you just get called all throughout the day with no regard to your job, right? They're at their job doing their job, calling you to get shit handled, and you are doing your job too, right? Is seeing patients, and so it's just a level of expectation on the front end.
That's great.
So a lot of times too, you know, this is in the construction phase, but like the equipment rep should be involved in this process in the pre-construction phase and meeting with. So I had this problem in this last build, Kris, just to give you an example, where my equipment specialist talked to me and my builder talked to me about equipment, but I was the man in the middle, right? Because I put them together so that I became the conduit. Eventually I had to be like, can you guys just talk to each other and handle this? Because like, what am I doing? I'm offering no value. So your equipment specialist, whoever you've decided potentially you're going to use, should be involved in checking out the plumbing, verifying the electrical plans on things, right? Okay. They're involved or in the beginning, not just the end where you pick equipment, right? How my nitrous lines look. You want to make sure that they are giving the blessing at all things. So when you lay down the plumbing lines for every room, let's just say you want your equipment specialist and your builder says, hey, come check it out. What do you think? You want to have your equipment specialist there with you and say, what do you think? Can you mark it out and guarantee that this is just as according to plan?
So even though you're not going to be signing off on your equipment towards the end of the project,
there's no guarantee that you're going to be using them, right? It's you know, my guy last time did not. I could have pivoted and bought something independent, but he knew I'd buy something from him, right? But like they have a wealth of knowledge, right? Like my guy's name is Joey Blaylock, and he's like built more offices than, you know, he's forgotten more than I know.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay. So system handlers, your general contractor handles the tech set. Okay. So there's a couple of things on this. It's just the construction management. And then we talked about this at the very bottom, inspect plumbing before the concrete pour. Everything else can be worked out, I've found, but this is catastrophic if done wrong, or wrong position, wrong angles, wrong dimension of the lines, meaning let's say they put in 1/2-inch lines and there should have been full inch, 1-inch line. They put in, 1/2-inch line, shit like that. Will just like, okay, here we go. And this goes for interior remodel as well as, and ground up, of course.
Right.
Because interior remodel, you're going to be cutting concrete in an interior remodel as well. Okay. So we've jumping right to kind of completion and operations of things. I know there's things along the way, but honestly, once you let's just say you've done all the things that I recommended and you're breaking ground, it really can be quite a joyous process, right? Like, let's say you have a Revit plan and you have this and you know where you're going to be and you have your builder's giving you the calendar of events and when things are going to happen, and you're looking and you're shopping and you're doing all the things, right? You're getting it can actually be a pleasant experience building. I've had builds that I was like, man, this is so much fun, right? Because I was prepared for it. But I've also had builds, Kris, where I was building that parachute on the way down. I was overstressed. I was over busy, and it was not fun. When I say it wasn't fun, it was like, you hear women talking about pregnancy and they hate it. And then they, 2 years later, they're romantic about it again. Like, I want to do that again. You're like, but you hated it when you were going through it. That's kind of like me. I was like a glutton for punishment. I finally had to figure it out. That
you're pregnant. So,
yeah. And so, it's just, so if you've gone through that, right, the build is it's actually quite systematic. If you get people involved and get people's blessings, your equipment manufacturer, you get your builder on the same page, you've got a nice Revit, your architect can talk to your builder, right? You've connected them. It can actually be a quite pleasant build. I would recommend, like let's say you were building, I would recommend, even in an interior remodel, this goes for both. The more times you can just pop in, the better. Doesn't mean you're going to do anything. I got to tell you, most times I went to the site, it wasn't because someone was asking me to come. It was because I wanted to come see. And I noticed like, hey, what about this? And oh, what are we doing? And it's exciting and you're in communication. But I would recommend trying to get there a couple times a week. Okay. But it's not a necessity. It's not a necessity. Especially if you hire someone who's really kind of buttoned up.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah, it does. It does.
So equipment happens. So we're in the phase 5, which is the completed operations. I don't want to go through the build process because really at that point, like there's not much I can comment on in between the time you break ground and the time you're almost open anymore. That makes sense? Because like the process is set in place. Right. Builders know how to build. You've communicated as much as possible. You've got your plans. Like there's not much I can talk about on this podcast regarding that.
True.
So equipment gets installed after the floors and paint have been put in. Dental equipment is usually the last thing to go in. Okay.
Have you done that? Have you done that in the wrong order?
Yeah. What do you think? Hey, our equipment came in sooner. We're going to go install on Friday. Yeah. Right. And then the GC's like, the general contractor's like, what? They just showed up and blah, blah, blah. Yes. So then the equipment has to stay in plastic wrap and it's a mess.
Sure.
Right. Because there's dust and sanding and paint shit everywhere. And it's a disaster. I would also say once you get to the place where you're like, man, this building is going to be done. And you and your contractor agree that the building is going to be done on X date. I would not open on X date.
Got it.
I would say, okay, building's going to be done June 1. Let's open soft opening June 12th or whatever it is that's corresponding with that so that we have time to move our stuff in, test our systems, do a friends and family day kind of thing where we come in, you test the equipment and do some fillings and do, have a cleaning, make sure all the equipment works. You want to iron out all the kinks. But I would say the 2-week buffer from the time that you get I'm trying to say GC, a certificate of completion, a CO, a certificate of occupancy. From the time you get like your CO to when you want to open, it's probably around 2 weeks. Okay. I mean, so many things. I feel like I'm just going fast, but not comprehensive enough because there's so many things I want to like mention. But I'm like, okay, what do you have any questions for me right now?
So with that, let's say you have your targeted completion. How close to that date are you getting? Because going through construction, when are they giving you more of that firm,
yeah, that will be towards the end. That's a good question. So you want to be communicating. This is where like the deadlines and not having one maybe works against you.
Sure.
But once you get to the drywall completed phase, that's when I would ask for not painted or anything. I would ask for when do you think we'll be done? Okay. Because at that point you've got walls, electric in, your plumbing's in, your HVAC, all that stuff is in. Like all the engineering stuff are in, and it's very predictable.
Okay.
For them to say, we're going to be done in a month, whatever.
Good.
And that's another reason to say like, okay, well, you're not waiting on me because I gave you all the stuff on the front end, right? You know which floor I want, you know which sink I want, you know which vanity I want, you know which lighting fixture I want. You're not waiting on me anymore.
Yeah. So you're not holding them up.
Sometimes if you don't have all that ready to go, they can use that like, well, I was waiting, I was ready. Yeah. And so, yeah. And so what other questions? I'm just looking at some of my notes here on project closeout and stuff like that. And I think it's pretty granular.
So in that 2-week buffer, the dry run, going through it sounds like you've probably had some things that you maybe tested out or weren't working. Like if somebody's in that 2-week dry run period, friends and families, like what would you really be testing out to make sure it's
do my hand pieces work? Are we getting suction? How is this? Like, do we know how to work these new sterilizations? So you'll do what's called, if you're getting a lot of new equipment, and you're not relocating equipment, you're going to have to do what's called an in-service day. That's where all the manufacturers who you've bought stuff of will come in and teach your people how to use the things. Recommend having those recorded so that then you can form a document of kind of video training sessions for new employees. Okay. Not vital, but like, it's just a good idea. It's nice to do an in-service day. But like, sometimes you just don't know, like this plumbing line, bloke, or this Cavitron doesn't fit with this, attachment. Like, it's all these things that you just can't. This TV's not working in the ceiling, and my X-rays are not coming up, and it's shit like that. It's shit like that. It's not. It's not
taking the time to really test it out.
Just ironing out the kinks, honestly, right? There's a lot of little moving parts, and it's not super complex in a dental operatory, but there's a lot of little things that you want to work right. Also, like, as you get reports, so I was loading all of my reports from my building. So builder is going to submit something for what's called a draw. So let's say you got approved for $2 million. Your builder is every month is going to submit a draw for, here's the bills for that month. You can, and then you give that to the bank. The bank then goes out and checks if the progress has been done, and then they issue the money. The, contrary to popular belief, people think like the bank's like, okay, you're approved for the loan. Here's the $2 million for the building. No. It's like, okay, we're going to do an as-built proposal. We're going to do an as-built survey. We're going to hire this external firm to make sure that the work we're paying for it every month has been completed as suggested. And you get to bear the cost of that. It's the benefit of borrowing their money. They say, okay.
So that's interesting. I would think like buying a practice, they cut you a check. And you're managing it. So you're saying you sign the agreement, and then as it progresses,
it's a draw. Now, the benefit to that, though, Chris, is for them, and I think some of this is, they're doing it to help you out, is that you only get charged the interest on the money that you've actually cashed.
Sure.
So, if they were to hand you the $2 million up front, all of a sudden interest is accruing day one, and that's hard. I would rather it be 150 one month, 300 the next month, 350, accruing over time. So it does save you a little bit in interest.
And it probably keeps the builder motivated, because they have to show progress to get paid from the bank.
Oh yeah. And they know that everything's getting checked off in completion, and they know that like they're not getting paid until they do. So here's where I think I did it right this last time, and I didn't have the technology that existed the prior build. So I have my builder contract, I have my architectural contracts, I have my banking contracts, I have all these contracts, right? So put that aside. Now I have every draw that's coming in, my billing and such. So I'm having these all scanned in and made into a custom GPT, so that I can ask it questions about so now I have my own like custom GPT build where I can ask my AI, like, hey, did I get double billed for that? What was the thing there later on? And just trust me, you're going to want to, because it's going to, as much as you're going to know that you're organized and buttoned up, you're going to have confusion, and you're going to want to have a binder, right? The first thing is your demographics is going to go in this binder, that research there. The next phase, what we talked about, all these things go in a binder that you can have as your process, because it's also going to be helpful as you go towards what's called, the benefit, as we're going full circle with this, is that you're going to look back on the reason to build the building. And with now the administration, there's 100% bonus depreciation back in, potentially. I don't know if it's 100% passed yet, but they're looking to this. I think it's going to be permanent.
Really?
So like a lot of the benefit of building a building is being able to depreciate it over time, or accelerating that depreciation. So in the year you build a $2 million building, you might not pay any taxes that year on the income that you made, right? Because you're depreciating this asset that you've spent. And it's not that you've spent the money out of your pocket. The bank has loaned you the benefit. So it's a really cool thing. Bank says, here, I'll give you $2 million. You gave them a little bit of money or no money sometimes, right? And you get the $2 million depreciation and this inflationary hedged asset, as well as an increased facility to increase the dental operation. So now your revenues get to grow.
Yeah, that's one thing that's really been eye-opening over the last couple of years, is you think, why build why not just rent? And then hearing you all just speak through the wealth kind of building engine that it creates is not only the asset, but the ability to depreciate that and protect yourself from
you see
being
the same
taxed at a high
dialogue
rate.
happening. You see the same dialogue happening on Twitter, and like for whatever reason, like your generation, are you a Gen? Are you a millennial?
I'm a millennial. Yep.
Yeah. So you hear a lot of these millennials. I'm not throwing shade at millennials, but like the connotation is rent your house, don't buy. Right. And housing is too expensive and you should just rent it. And the same with, dental office. Like, so you can do one of two things. You can optimize for cash flow, like you're doing, right? My rent is cheap. I want to stay where I am. Great. So you're going to optimize for cash flow and then go find other inflationary hedged assets where you can do. So go and get in a real estate deal, right? Like the ones we do all the time. I'm not saying do that, but like something like that. But you have to go look for hedged assets because cash sitting in a bank, as we know, is not a hedged asset. So real estate is a very forced way to save and be accretive to your net worth in a tax advantaged environment. Okay. So again, if you're renting, just optimize for cash flow, make as much discretionary income to get into other products. Fine. Or if you build something and then do your analysis on your cash flow analysis every month and be like, I make 10, I only need 5 kind of thing. So my cash flow by building this new building is probably going to go down a little bit. My cash flow is going to go down to me net potentially, but it's right pocket, left pocket, right? It's going to a different pocket. And now you have an asset that is accretive over time. It's a net worth builder, right? Most people get wealthy in the United States by real estate aggregation.
Yeah, and you said one interesting thing that I've heard a couple of times.
I only said one.
Well, yeah, I'll give you one.
I'm kidding, Kris.
So there's an incentive to save in taxes by being able to depreciate. That helps when we're taxed at a high rate. But you said once the building is done and there's a lease in place, the value of the asset went up to me pretty astronomically. So even though you're investing X number of dollars, once it's completed and you put your office in place, it's worth way more than just what you spent.
Yeah. And so that is a net worth that goes on your net worth. So, right. So, and the way that building, and so people say like, well, I don't want to sell my building. I need to do dentistry out of it. I'm like, no, it's called a lease back where you're selling your building and you're just now leasing it back from them. Okay. And so, I would say don't do that if you can avoid it, but it's a nice contingency plan to say, man, I built big and I'm kind of too tight and I'd like to sell. I don't know. I mean, there's contingencies for getting capitalized from your building because everyone loved the long-term lease of a dental office. It's a precision built building for that just specific use. And Kris, the way you would operate with the way you can do an analysis of that is, and I won't go into it here because it's not here, but like you basically say, what am I charging myself rent every month? Okay. What is that over the course of a year? So that's what's called your NOI, your net operating income. And so let's say it's, let's use easy numbers to make it. So let's say your rent is $10,000. You're charging yourself $10,000 a month, which may be high market rent, may be low. Doesn't really matter.
Sure.
That's more of a CPA question. Sometimes they push back on shit like that. But then for that building, your NOI would be $120,000, right? And you structure a lease with yourself because you're going to hold the building in a different LLC than your practice. It's church and state. You're going to, so you're going to have Kris's building LLC, Kris's dental practice LLC. Kris's dental practice monthly pays the Kris's building LLC, just like you would. You have a lease set up that you have signed between practice LLC and building LLC. Okay. The building LLC lease has value on the open market. So you found kind of a money glitch.
Yeah.
because now you have something, right? The practice, only dentists, that's only valuable to dentists. You got to have a license unless you're in Arizona.
Right.
You got to have a license done in dental practice, right? So it has value to a smaller amount of people. But the building has value to the world, even with your lease in place. So you want to put in a 10-year lease with 2 5-year options. That's a 20-year span. You could go to market with that, looking at the cap rate of where you are from an NOI, and then you have escalators built in, right? So you know what that is?
Just year over year, your rate for rent is going to increase.
Your rate for rent changes. And typically, 3% is really good. That's really sexy to the outside investor, because that means, if inflation is going up at 2%, which is what I think the goal, then there's a hedge on that. They get a little bit of a VIG every month, every year. This inflation hedged asset is going up a little bit more than inflation is. Okay. So not to mention just the asset appreciation. If we saw anything in COVID, like housing went up, right? So we think about it in terms of a linear investment, but potentially that building could have an outsized return. All of a sudden the economics could change on your environment in your city. And all of a sudden now things could be worth way more. So you have upside appreciation and just the value of your building, on going back to the net worth thing. Okay.
Yeah.
So something is worth what someone's willing to pay. And so that's where it's fun to do. And again, I won't go into it here, but like, take your NOI. There's calculators on the internet that'll let you determine what your cap rate would be in market, right? So obviously the higher rents you're paying, the higher your NOI, the more market value your building has. Granted, if you sell that building and you have a rent that's super high, you are now stuck paying that to someone else in perpetuity. Right. So don't go too high.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's a nice it's a nice out, because when I run my net worth, like Randy has told us to do every 3 months, right? I am looking at a sliding scale of cap rate value, what I owe the bank for the building, what I think the building is worth from a cap rate perspective, and the delta in that goes into my net worth column, right? Here's what it would be worth after I sold it.
Got it.
After debt service.
Yeah.
So yes.
No, it's really eye-opening to see you guys working through this. And what I've thought about is banks are very bullish on lending to dentists.
Right.
But if you flip it, it's like, why, and why not be that way with ourselves? Bet on yourselves.
Yeah, right.
Kind of make these moves. So that's kind of how I see it. If we're so attractive to them, we should have a certain level of confidence in
they're no
what
dummies,
we're doing.
right? They didn't get the biggest building in town by being dummies. And so they have data that on the industry that you don't have. And guess what? They will, if you do potentially put yourself in an outsized deal, meaning something that you're going to get in trouble with, they are going to let you know,
right?
Meaning they're going to act as your advocate, because they don't want to put their money in a bad deal, right? Okay, so here are some kind of, like, as we close, and this pod is, this is going to be part 1 and part 2, because we're now in an hour and a half, and it's just too long to listen to.
Right.
Okay, so again, here's some critical success numbers that I think are important to remember from this pod. The dentist ratio you want to look at when you're evaluating. Your budget split. You think about your construction costs versus your dental equipment. Give yourself a 2-year timeline from the time, and that just is for ground up. For a renovation, you want to look at maybe a year and a half. Okay. It's actually not much shorter. You would think it would be already built, but there's more permitting, more things going on when you're trying to retrofit an existing structure.
Really? So the timeline doesn't speed up too much.
I mean, all the principles apply, Chris. You're still going to want to rev it. You're still going to have to permit. You're still going to want to have contracts. You're still all the things that apply. You have to pick out your toilets and all these things. The same things apply, other than the fact that you now have an existing structure. But sometimes you're making a circle fit a square. Like, you're trying to make things work, and you have let me rephrase it this way. In an interior remodel, there are things that you could have never anticipated happening, and they're going to happen. That's going to slow down the build process versus a clean canvas ground up construction. There are no unknowns, because you are in control of it from dirt.
Got it.
Right. Sometimes when you go to demo an interior remodel, Oh shit, there's a asbestos in here. Who knows? Oh shit, these floors this is on top of an old, dry cleaner, or there's a tank in here, or these walls have mold in it. Like we didn't know when we were doing our, like who knows? You just never effing know.
Yeah, it's good insight.
So it's not, don't think that an interior remodel is the easy of the two. Yeah. I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking about all the stories. Site selection, I think, goes regardless. Find a busy building if it's already existing, or find a busy piece of land people are driving by. I would like to see everyone listening to this. In my heart of hearts, I would love for everyone to have a VPD of 10K or more. And some people may say, shit, that's a lot. But like, okay, it is. It is. But like, and where do you get that data, by the way? Do you know where you get that data?
It's pretty available online, right?
That's right.
By the city.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So it's going to be like, for us, it's the GDOT, right? Georgia Department of Transportation. You're going to have, I guess you have Arizona DOT. But that is readily available. And usually it's census, census data from, it's delayed a little bit more. So, meaning it'll say this data is from 4 years ago or whatever. Okay. And you may say, well, shit, I've watched this grow my own self by 30% over the past 3 years.
Yeah.
Right. Architect fees, square foot for operatory, right? I think we never talked about this. I think that the best size operatory I've ever built, Kris, is not, you would think wider operatories. I should have talked about this. You would think most people will tell you a 10 by 10 op is fine.
A square.
I will tell you, my favorite ops are not wider. As a matter of fact, you do not want to create wider operatories. Why would you think that would be?
The ability to reach or use the counters.
Nailed it. It's too far. What you would want to do, the ideal op, I think, is 14 feet long.
Really? Is that so
you can have a chair in there,
the patients can come in front and stuff?
Wow. Yeah, and then you don't feel jammed, like, and your equipment's not swinging around. And, oh, can you move while I swing this light bar around your chair and this and that? So in my heart of hearts, I would have built, sometimes you can't do it, but a 10 to 12 is great. A 10 to 14, I like a long operatory. It's
interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought about it, but now that I'm visualizing that right now, that's where it gets pinched, and that can make a big difference.
Yeah, and honestly, that's where it also feels spacious, Kris, versus people have a hard time determining, like, this is a spacious operatory. It's like, okay, the width of it, but it's the length, but they're visual. Right. So they feel more opulent. They feel more extravagant. They feel better. And you're compromising, by adding that extra, it's 20 more square feet per operatory, right? So like the delta is 2 by 10, right? 20 square feet. So you're adding a little bit, but I think it's really cool. So if you can do it, that I would highly recommend that. 10 by 10 is the minimum.
Got it.
And guess what happens in that scenario? If you do not nail every aspect of your plumbing, every aspect of your electrical, every aspect of your cabinetry, you think about it. Your cabinets can only come out so far from the wall. Your chairs can only be pushed up so far. Like, you don't have that much wiggle room if you screw the pooch and someone blows, put something in the wrong position, which it happens in every build, dude. Every single build, something is not where it should be, and you don't realize it. So having that long length allows you to move that chair up to the junction box or back away from it. Or if the operatory, or if the operator, hygienist or doctor gets jammed in the space, like, what are you going to do when the chair comes fully reclined and now the doctor is like kind of buttoned up against the cabinetry or the countertop? Like, that's a problem, bud.
Right.
And then you don't have any room to fix it. But when you have a 14-foot long op, you're good. You're good.
That's awesome.
Be cognizant with change orders, with proper planning. Your flooring, you want to obviously look for deals, and because that's a big expense of the building. That's probably 2% of your build is going to be flooring, 2 or 3. So sometimes like a Floor and Decor will have deals on LVT. Like, just keep an idea on this stuff, and you want to look for something that's a commercial 20-year lifespan.
Got it.
Okay. Again, we talked about materials to avoid: wood, granite countertops, 90-degree suctions. Make sure you know I've actually got there's some diagrams. I think Midmark put it out if you Google it. There's actually like an example plumbing diagram that you could give a GC that says, hey, make sure the electrician follows this.
Right.
What you want to choose is LVT, Corian. We talked about that. Same flooring. Oh, putting the same flooring throughout the building is a big cost savings versus like all these different floorings and all these different tiles and things like that. I recommend just putting it all throughout the whole building.
Yeah, I like that.
Bathrooms obviously do tile, but do it throughout and do it under the counters. Don't let them build. The cabinetry. Don't say, hey, we're going to put the cabinets in and then do the flooring to it, because what will happen is you'll have if you ever want to move something, it's like, ooh, got this space.
Yeah.
If we talk about operatory technology, that's something you want to plan too. And every single build, this has been problematic for me because people are confused as to what technology I want in there. Okay. So sometimes it's nice to get an IT person who's done a lot of dental on board as your contractor in the beginning phase, because you're going to have to run a lot of wires.
Right.
So all of my operatories always have 3 displays in them: the computer, the over the chair TV where you're lying reclined, and then the TV on the wall. Okay. The TV in the ceiling only plays like a Roku or a streaming service. The TV on the wall plays both, is a split from the TV in the ceiling. The signal is split so it can play TV while you're just sitting there, but it also will be a split from the computer. So all of my computers have dual HDMI outputs, so you can display the x-rays, because I like to have x-rays up as the doctor comes in, and I like to be on that screen so that the patient sees it, right? So little things like that, like you just want to make sure to kind of get, and it happened so many times, Chris, people have been like, what? That I finally like drew diagram and like saved it and like just give it to people. Like, here's how you do it, kind of thing.
Right.
You want to make sure you're running a lot of cabling. Yes, I know that Wi-Fi is prevalent and throughout, but like still running cabling, Cat 6 cabling through your building is still a good idea. It's just much faster and strong Wi-Fi. Plus your security cameras will have to kind of run on some of that Cat 6.
So you recommend having that throughout your building? Security cameras
and strong Wi-Fi, right? Because look, Cat 6 wires are cheap, right? Network cables are cheap,
right?
So, and cheap and secure, and probably 4 times as fast, or more than Wi-Fi, right? And so, so yeah, I am a fan of just, when in doubt, I'm a fan of this actually. When in doubt, pull a Cat 6. When in doubt, put an electrical box there, because you know what the cost of putting in a box would be? Not hey, can you come put an electrical outlet for me, Mr. Contractor? I'm saying in the phase of when they're starting. Do you know how much an electrical outlet is typically?
What, like $50, $100?
$40. $40. So like, when in doubt, I was like, yeah, give me one there, because like, I don't know if I need it or not, but but I sure as heck, it's not going to bother me if I don't use it. It will bother me if I need it.
Right.
So the other area that you can kind of save on when you get to this place is not using dental cabinetry. Okay. So I have never in not one build, I'm pausing, I have never used dental cabinetry.
So you're saying
actually, I take that back. Used it in my first one, and it was not good. It was ugly. It fell apart. Okay. Personally. Now, granted, they've probably come a long way. I'm not throwing shade at all the big manufacturers, but like, if I showed you some of the reports I've seen for the margins in cabinetries, that's why they are really, really wealthy companies.
Yeah.
So and guess what? Did you know that you could go take a picture of something? Let's say you had a dental cabinetry that you loved and you saw it in your buddy's office. You can find the dimensions of that online, take some pictures of it, and then take it to a cabinet maker and they will make you that for probably less than half cost. And it'll
Wow.
probably be more robust because that's what they do. Meaning, right, they build cabinets.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
in the business of cabinets. Some of the best cabinets too, by the way, the most durable, and I've had some of these cabinets in place for 15 years and they still look super new, is like they put a glossy veneer on the front. Have you ever seen those, like a super glossy cabinet?
Okay.
Like those are so durable, man. You can't you can't screw those up. And they look so good and modern. You see them a lot at like IKEA.
Sure. Yeah.
Believe it or not, like one of my cabinets, speaking of IKEA, I did a whole cabinet order from IKEA and it was fantastic.
Did you have to put it together though?
No, I didn't, but like
Good.
actually they have a different division. It's not like it came in the box and I picked it off of like the Skulton box or whatever. I don't know what it is, but they have a different division for that, but it looked fantastic.
Nice. Yeah.
So just food for thought. And so I've used a cabinet manufacturer, not the same cabinet manufacturer. So I've done this with probably 4 or 5 cabinet people and it's been great. It's been great. Now, granted, there's a little bit more customization at the end, right? Oh shit, this pipe's coming out where it shouldn't have come out, but like you have that all the time anyway,
right?
But that's a big cost savings,
So your 10% equipment spend then is without that.
Oh yeah. Sorry, so that is without cabinets. Yes,
Great.
So I don't consider that equipment because you got that's furniture, fixture. It's furniture and fixtures, not equipment.
Perfect.
So yeah, this is the end here. Again, it's kind of just reiterating some of the things I spoke about. And then, here's some kind of stuff of just examples of why this helps build wealth. And we touched on this a lot of times. Again, there's a cash flow aspect to it. There's an appreciation aspect. This tax benefit is probably the biggest benefit personally. There's the 1031 exchange, there's an inflation hedge. Again, you talked about being bank friendly.
Right.
And it's just a leverage of power, honestly, because it leverages, you stay in control. I actually had the only building that I didn't own in my whole career, I got kicked out of.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And it was when I say it cost me millions of dollars, it did.
Wow.
Because there's a longer story there, but basically the lease had expired. They had a kicker in there where they could kick me out. Someone wanted to buy that building and do a high rise. They kicked us out. It's had 6 months to move. It was terrible. And revenues went down because we went from like 5 to 4. And, anyway, so where I'm going with this, Kris, is, and we never touched on this, is that when it's your building, you remain in control of it. When it's someone else's, you're asking for permission. Can I paint this? Can I do this? Are you going to release me? Are you going to release to me rather? Are you going to do this? And right. It's a pain.
Right.
Sometimes you have cool landlords, but sometimes you can have pain in the butts. And then other times you can be kicked out like me. So, and we don't think about these things because you sign a 10-year lease or a 5-year lease with this building. You're like, shit, that's a long time. But guess what? 5 years goes by, 10 years goes by super freaking fast.
Right. Yeah.
Especially in the context of a dental office. Right. And then guess what? When you don't have I'm thinking about next of kin. Let's say you're trying to sell your dental practice, or you're wanting to bring on an associate to then sell a partnership or have kind of a legacy build. If you lease it, right, an investor to sell, let's say you want to sell it to a DSO. Okay. If you only have 3 years left on your lease, what do you think that does to the value of your practice?
Yeah, it brings it down
tremendously, because the problem they're going to have is the same problem you're going to potentially have, is that this landlord could change their mind. They could get an offer like mine and someone could want to build a high rise. And now they've made this massive investment in this cash flow machine that is, the future is uncertain. I'm not saying you have to own your building to be certain, right? But think about it like that. Same thing is if you have an associate come on and they want to buy or take over your practice and they only have 3 years left. It's like, what do we do then? I don't know. We'll find something, So give me an example. Like, what is your lease? So you have a base term and then you have options, right?
Yeah. 2 5-year options.
Okay. So you have a base term of probably 10 and 5-year options. 20 years is good, right? That's a good thing. And more than likely, Kris, I will say that more than likely, once your options are enacted and utilized, the person that owns your building will probably lease to you again because it's a specialized building. It's hard to sell that in the open market to anyone other than a dentist. But by then, you have more in that 20-year period, you have more than paid for that person's building.
Right.
More. I'd say you did that in the first 10 years, by the way. I don't know.
Yeah, it's something to think about because you think about the the wealth building side of it, net worth building, but then there is a level of that just not being in control of a business that we're all building, right? 5 years at a time.
Control. And then the control as it relates to an outside investor. And I know we don't ever think about that. You're like, I'm a dentist. I'm not thinking about outside investors, but you just never know what your life is going to present. Right? Meaning an outside investor could be an associate who's coming on and they're investing from the outside and now they're in your practice, but they still want the longevity that you had. Okay. So look, that's why I'm a big fan of it. I think actually I think having all the buildings in my ecosystem has been a value, not just to myself, but I think it's been a value to my partners because they know I'm aligned with them. I'm not kicking them out for a high-rise building. I'm not, we are in it to win it together.
Right.
And yes, I took a risk and I swung and I built buildings and I risked my cash to build us stuff. Right. And I'm being rewarded for that now, but like risk reward. And they get that. And so I think it's just a good arbitrage in your life. Again, that arbitrage of when I say the word arbitrage, I think it's a good thing to say. I was a dentist. You look back in your life. It's like, I was a dentist. I took advantage of me being a stable client. I looked at that in a cap rate and I took advantage of the arbitrage of the building a building and it being worth a little bit more. Right. And maybe you never sell, but the fact that it's worth something, right, is like a little more comforting at night. Like, okay, that feels good.
Right. Yeah, no, this has been great. Just kind of laying out some of the process, the reasons why it might benefit somebody to consider.
I tell you what, believe it or not, like I'm sitting here, I had all these notes that I didn't look at all. And because I was so concerned on the content in front of me, but there's so many more things that like go into this. And they're not like, I missed it. I should have told you this, but like, it's not like that kind of thing. It's just little things that like little minutia that I've learned. I needed to do a weekend course, I think. I'm kidding. That's all I need to do in my life is have a weekend course. So, in closing, anything that you said that I said that was confusing?
No, I think this is great. I love that you're sharing that with us and the audience. This is something that I had never thought of 3 to 5 years ago, and through Bulletproof, you, Craig, the mastermind, it's really been eye-opening and just levers to pull, for net worth, building your business. And you had a note somewhere that it was, looking back, it's been one of the most rewarding moments that you've gone through, at the course of what you've built. You've done a ton, but you said going through the process and looking back on your real estate.
Okay. So yes, I think it has been one of the most things I'm proud of in my career. Yes. I will put a caveat into that says, honestly, Kris, if I hadn't been a builder, I probably would have been an architect.
Really?
Yeah. So I'm sorry. What did I say? If I hadn't been a dentist, I say builder.
He said builder, but
if I hadn't been a builder dentist, if I hadn't been a builder dentist, I would have been an architect. If I hadn't been a dentist, I would have been an architect.
Cool.
So I liked it it's at times I grumbled through the process, but it's just like anything else in life. Like you are romantic. I am romantic about the time periods in my life where I got embezzled from, believe it or not. Right. And I grinded through. It's easy. It's really easy when everything is going well to be like, okay, but like looking back, you're like, that wasn't that hard, but it's like the hard shit is what makes you proud. And so, yes, it's hard, but it's also like fulfilling. Like that building I just built, like, like that'll be there probably when I'm gone.
Right.
I have no idea, but I'm guessing, and my kids will drive by and be like, oh, I built that, like it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Yeah. So like, I'm a fan of it, but again, it resonates with who I am as a builder. Sure. And I say builder, I'm like, I am a growth oriented person who builds things going forward, right? Practices, buildings and investments. Like that's just who I am. Yeah. So again, it has to resonate with you. And you may say, shit, I don't give a shit what he says. I'm a renter and I don't care because I go home and I hand someone the keys and it's not mine. It's like when you go on vacation, it's the person who wants to rent your vacation home versus you. Right. When the AC breaks, your problem. When a renter comes in, they're like, here's your keys, here's your problem. Yeah. I'm happy to just write a check and move on down the road. And I see the value in that too. I do. So, okay. I this whole pod, I have been thinking in my head how I flubbed the loan to value thing.
Yeah. You blew it.
I did. So what I was, and I think I flubbed it because I was thinking about all the things that we were going to be talking about. So let me go back and revisit that just for my own edification. If you're just listening, you can tune off for this. But what I meant by that thing is if it gets appraised higher, and you have an 80% loan to value, the bank is still going to put in their 80%. If you're under contract for $1 million, right? The bank's like, all right, whatever it comes back as a valuation, the bank is saying, all right, we're still going to do 80% of that 1.5. So you could potentially have no down payment because all they have to get to is that 80% threshold. And they're saying basically, we're going to give you 80%. You're under contract for $1 million, right? We're going to do 80%, but it appraised for 1.5. So now we're going to do 80% of 1.5.
Which covers the entire
the whole thing.
Got it.
So that's what I was trying to say. And I got flipped around by the 20%. Like, wait, 20%? Now I'm paying more. Like, no. So that's what I meant to say is the bank is usually good for 80% of what it appraises for.
Yeah. So that's an added
now, the other
benefit.
thing can happen if it comes back and it's much lower. Obviously now you are on the hook. They're only paying 80% of that appraised value. If it comes in at valued at 700, now you got to make up the delta for that 20%. So it's now more than what you initially thought it was going to be, your down payment.
Okay.
So I had to clarify that. Thank you for letting me do that to save face I was like, what is going on in this brain?
That's good. Well, thanks, Pete. This was great.
Yeah, man. I love it. I love questions about this. If you're in, I know we talk about this in masterminds. And I know you've heard me kind of talk bits and pieces about this before, but I'm never really able to go through it in this level because there's so much we go over in mastermind, just like that sometimes you can't dig deep into someone. And honestly, sometimes this doesn't apply. So sometimes you only hear what is applicable to what you see happening in your life. But so for you reached out and said, hey, I might build. I want to know more. Right. But other people are like, I ain't ever building. I ain't listening. So.
Well, awesome, Pete. Well, thanks for sharing, especially when it's fresh. Like you just had that new beautiful building.
Yeah.
I think it's great to get some of that knowledge.
And honestly, I'm glad you asked because it made me, like you said, it made me document it in a fresh capacity. And now I have this like 14-page guide to I don't know, put on the shelf and collect dust. Yeah. But I wanted to at least get it down for the benefit of all. So it was fun, buddy. I was really excited about doing this because, as you know, I'm a big fan of leveraging this in your life if it so resonates with you. So even though for you, you're like things are not available, like drive around, get on Crexy all day long or once a week, right? Set alerts on LoopNet, get a subscription to something called Land Glide. If you find a piece of dirt, but it's not for sale, Landglide will help you. You can get on the App Store. Landglide will help you identify who is the owner. Send them a letter, call them, figure out where they live. A lot of times it's people out of state, believe it or not. They were left it in an estate sale or an estate. They were what am I trying to say? When someone dies, they were willed it over to them.
Oh.
So sometimes these people don't know, they don't care. And you can get an offer. Like one of the ones I bought was like, I bought it for peanuts because I had to get it rezoned. But I got the land for peanuts because there was an out-of-state buyer.
Cool.
So Landglide's really cool. You can drive around and be like, who owns this building? And it'll tell you everything.
Yeah,
So,
I think it's great just going through it. You have to be thinking about it a ways in advance, right? So searching the land. It's a 2-year process. So
I still do it. Like I drive around even when I'm just driving, looking at like wherever I drive, I'm like, oh, that'd be a cool building. Oh, that'd be a cool dental building. Oh, like you're just always on the hunt if it's what you want to do. And, and if there's a piece of dirt that's not for sale, like I said, you reach out to that person and see if it's something you can do, especially in an area like yours where, if it's quote unquote not for sale, it's you can beat the streets a little bit. And where I'm going with this, Kris, is a lot of people, you only see when it's for sale when someone has engaged fully with a broker has taken it to market, blah, blah, blah. A lot of times, a lot of real estate is done in private sales like this.
Yeah, it's great insight.
So, okay, bud, enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. It was fun.
You're welcome. Oh, last thing, make sure everyone knows. I think Vanessa posted. Kris, have you? I wanted to make sure to talk about the summit since this will probably be coming out and probably the last available. The room block was sold out. Vanessa got more rooms at Summit.
Great.
Summit is going to be full and big and hot in Orlando, but it's going to be amazing. Honestly, the people have been texting me that they're coming. It's like just world-class talent, right? And I'm really excited for this one.
Yeah, I'm excited. It'll be awesome.
It's gonna be awesome. So check it out, everyone. If you're on the fence, just freaking do it.
Do it.
Bulletproofsummit.com. Okay, everyone, over and out.